So we're going to be right in front.
You want? I should be right underneath my picture.
Anywhere?
Good morning. Come on. Good morning. Welcome to the U.S. Capitol. How many of you is this first time here? Raise your hand. That is a lot of you. That is incredible. Well, this is an opportunity, obviously, for you all, but this is a day that we celebrate you. And all your hard work that got you here, the hours you put in, the volunteering, the personal development, the exploration, absolutely incredible. The physical fitness. You belong here. Yesterday we had a great opportunity to meet many of you face to face. How many of you were in my group? Raise your hand. How many have I met? Okay, I think half of you have already met on LinkedIn now, so thanks for that follow-up. I accepted those last night. Thank you very much. That was pretty good. For those of you who have not met yet, on LinkedIn, just look up my name. You'll find me. I got the same beautiful bald head. It's a great photo. Right? This is the day, again, we celebrate you, and this is a day that you should feel very proud. Do you know how many gold medalists there are that have been awarded by the United States Congress to date? It is a very small amount. When you think about how many Americans we have in this great country of ours, 380 million, give or take, and you are less than 1% of the people who currently hold a gold medal from the United States Congress. Give yourself a round of applause. Come on. All right, so today's going to be an incredible day for you all. Please enjoy it. Take it all in. It's one of those moments, you know, I look back in the days when I was doing some cool events. I can remember I was on tour with the Rolling Stones. Mom and Dad, you know the Rolling Stones? Yes. I'd spent 9 months on tour with the Rolling Stones. And at some point along the way, I said to myself, wow, this is incredible. What an experience. So take it all in. And don't be afraid to take photos, right? This is something you're going to want to remember for the rest of your life. That gold medal is going to be on your college applications, going to be on your resume for the rest of your life. So I'm a CEO myself, and I hire people all the time. In fact, I was just talking to my friend Paxton Baker, who you'll hear from shortly, and we were talking about the impact that you all have had on society and how proud we are of you. Well, today you're going to hear from some leaders. We're going to talk about what's going to come next for you all, which is career pathing. Thinking about what are you going to do later on in life. And we're going to have a lot of fun with this panel because you have a lot of expertise up here, and these folks are actually quite fun. But here's the best part. We're here for you, okay? We're volunteers. We've taken times out of our schedules for you all. So you're going to have a chance to ask questions. So start thinking about those questions and don't be shy about them, okay? Because when it comes to life, as I told somebody yesterday, as a volunteer firefighter, my fire chief always said to me, the world is run by people who show up, okay? These people show up, and you all have shown up. So let's get moving. All right, let me do an introduction, and I'll ask my panelists to introduce themselves as well. So my name is Ray Cairns. I'm the CEO of the Next Solutions Group. We're a corporate reputation firm. What does that mean? We help companies and individuals when they get in trouble, but only those who are willing to help themselves, right? This is not one of those things you see in the movies like, let's sweep it under the rug or make it go away. No. Companies always say to me, Ray, what do I say? And I always say, what are you going to do? What action are you going to take to fix your problem, and we'll help you fix that. So before I was doing this, before I started this company, I spent 20 years in large global corporations at Pfizer, Merck & Bayer, and global jobs, running government relations and communications. Today I sit, besides the Congressional Award Board, I also sit on the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Board, and I'm the chairman of the Center for Disease Control Business Roundtable down in Atlanta, Georgia, where we look at global health threats and we try and help make the world a better place. I have 3 lovely, lovely children who are all, by the way, all in the program. My daughter Megan has got her silver award. My other 2 kids are waiting to submit only for their gold. I know some of you did that. We talked about that yesterday, right? Some of you just didn't. You didn't go for the early stages of it, and you went right for the gold, and congratulations. That's why we're here today. So let me turn to my panelists. We'll start with Steve for introduction, and we'll get this panel rolling. Eric, are we good to go? Excellent. All right, let's have some fun.
All right, that's a tall order and setup here to have me lead out to have fun. So I am Steve Hartel, Vice President of Public Policy for Amazon, and I wanted to make sure that I sat right underneath my picture here. I hope I did a good job. I don't know where I'm lined up with you guys out there. I'm also a board member here at the Congressional Award Foundation, and I just want to make a quick +1 on the congratulations to you all for being here and for all the hard work you put in. It really is, I've just kind of sat here and marveled looking out at you all. You look great, by the way. Everybody's got their suit and tie on a 90-degree Washington day. Glad to have you here. Just by way of background, again, I run policy for Amazon, and I would expect we'll get some questions directed my way for like, what exactly does that mean and what do you do? I would just tell you that by way of background, I moved to Washington, D.C. right out of college. So my Washington, D.C. and professional story starts a couple of years ahead of where you guys are now. And let me just tell you, let me put in a plug, and parents, I'm sorry that I'm going to do this, but this is a great place to start your career in Washington, D.C. I wasn't able to be with you all last night, but I was at the congressional baseball game, and it was 20,000 people that are 30 and under, and it just really reminded me of what a great place Washington, D.C. is to start your career. I moved here to work on Capitol Hill. I worked for Senator Fritz Hollings from South Carolina, who's a name you guys will have to look up in the history books. I see some parents nodding their heads. And started as right out of college, in an entry-level position on Capitol Hill. And the other thing I'd say about careers in Washington is you kind of feel like you're going to start here and then maybe move elsewhere. And now I'm 25 years in a set of different positions in tech companies. But from North Carolina originally, live in Alexandria, Virginia with my family of 3 daughters who are kind of in between the ages of you guys in the room. And I really am excited for this conversation today.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Pamela Alexander. It is weird that we sat in front of our pictures. That was not intentional on my part. Welcome, congratulations. I want to echo, I was part of the speed mentoring as well yesterday. I see some familiar faces out there, and Ray and I walked out together, and we were just marveling at how impressive you were, and maybe comparing it to ourselves a bit at your age, which you're remarkable. But anyway, good morning. I'm Pamela. I am head of global corporate citizenship at KKR. So to kind of just break that down a little bit, KKR is a global investment firm based in New York with roughly $600 billion in assets under management. And we have probably about 100 or so portfolio companies we own, as well as all kinds of financial infrastructure, equity type of things that we do. I've been there just over a couple of years. As head of corporate citizenship, I'm responsible for how KKR shows up in communities around the world. So partnering with nonprofits globally mostly around economic opportunity, developing partnerships. I sit on the board also of the Congressional Award Foundation, and putting in place programs that really break down barriers and open doors, both in terms of supporting monetarily, but also through sharing of our time and talent of our global employees. I've been there just over a couple years. I'm from Michigan. I see at least one Michigan face out there that I talked to yesterday. I spent my earlier career in corporate finance, which was a bit of a deviation, and government affairs, as well as ending up in corporate philanthropy, which is where I know I'm supposed to be, with an automotive company based in Michigan. But I'm really excited to talk to you today. I would encourage you to ask questions, because the worst thing is walking out of a session like this and saying, I wish I had asked. So make sure you ask questions. I'll turn it over.
All right. Hello. Hi, I'm Erin Roberts. My job is a lot easier to explain. I work for Five Guys, which is based here in Alexandria, Virginia. I'm actually mostly from this area. I was born in Philly, but raised from second grade in Rockville, Maryland. Moved away and then came back because my mom was here and I had the only grandchild, so I came back. I am Chief People Officer, which is basically the head for HR globally for Five Guys, and I'm also Deputy General Counsel. I actually joined Five Guys in '09 as a lawyer, but I'm an employment lawyer in my former life, and so when our outgoing Chief People Officer resigned, I was tagged, and it just opened up a whole new world for me. It's very different than being a lawyer for a company. I get to do things proactive. I get to do things like this. I get to reach out to the communities and make sure people know that Five Guys is a place where you can have a career, even if you start, as a crew member in a store. I've seen it happen. People go from crew member to general manager to vice president. So I'm thrilled to be here today. Please ask any and all questions. Oh, and I'm also the mom of Mia Roberts, who has just graduated NYU, and she is kind of where you guys are, just 4 years later, trying to figure out what she wants to do with herself. So,
congratulations.
Thank you.
And I love the fries, right? Round of applause for the fries.
Wait for Five Guys fries.
Okay. All right, so how many of you out there have a part-time job? Raise your hand. Not trying to embarrass anybody, part-time job. Okay, let's actually start there, because that's kind of fun. Erin, you start off. What was your first job when you were in school?
Gosh.
Uh-huh.
I worked part-time retail at a women's dress store. Yeah.
What'd that teach you?
Oh, gosh, that I didn't want to do that.
That's a good answer.
And that while I considered, up until that point, I was very successful academically, that I felt like an idiot the first time I walked into the store and couldn't, use the cash register. It humbled me a lot.
Yeah, I bet it did. Yeah. Pamela?
So this is how much we trust and love this foundation. We haven't seen these questions, so we don't know what's coming at us. My first internship was working for a Blue Cross company in Michigan, filing. Okay, so let me describe that, because that's when you take pieces of paper and put them in a folder and put them in this cabinet. For those some people keep everything in the cloud. This is old school. I'm going back in time here. And then my next job was filing at a library and putting book specs on shelf as a work-study job to help get through college. Nothing against anyone who loves library science. But much like Erin, I hate filing, so I realized I had to do something else. But I was filing and putting things away to pay my way through college.
Now, is the question first job?
First job.
First job.
And when you were a kid,
okay.
Their age,
first job, that was
job you had?
Paper route. Another job, I think people will be like, what are we talking about?
Steve, why don't you explain the paper route to the folks?
Well, it used to be, I know. Well, you're right. You walk through National Airport and you're not going to find a newspaper for sale, which kind of blows my mind. But yeah, it was, I grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina, and there used to be a twice weekly free newspaper. And so it was really easy. You delivered it to every door. And the money, you're like, what do I remember about it? I mean, I remember getting paid, and I remember that being great because, the first form, kids of independence, is, collecting a paycheck made out to you. And so, there were definitely, I rode my bike, and I had to carry the papers on my back, and it was hard work. And you're right, I think I did hate it, but I loved getting paid.
So if we already learned one lesson here to start, right? Your first job, you're probably not going to like it. There's a good chance of that, but you're going to learn things, right? You're going to figure out how to deal with people. You're going to figure out what you like and don't like, and that's why I think you can hear from the panelists. Take a shot, try it out. Pamela, you mentioned internship. So my first internship was at the Bronx DA's office in the organized crime unit. I come from a law enforcement family. My dad was a homicide detective in the Bronx. My sister was a police officer as well. That's where I thought I was going. When I was 18 years old, I was certain I was going to be in law enforcement. In fact, I have a criminal justice degree for what it's worth. And I got a master's in science later on. Some of you guys know we talked about this yesterday. So internships, let's talk about that for a second.
I've never done an internship.
Wait, say that again.
I've never done an internship. Now, we host interns. I don't know why. Yeah. Faint, and I talk quietly, so I apologize. We host a lot of interns, and we're formalizing our program now. We've done it sort of as on an ad hoc basis, but I personally have never done one.
How about the importance, though, of internships?
Oh, they're huge. I mean, I think the value is getting to know the people and seeing what the job is day to day. I mean, I worked as a legal secretary before I went to law school because I wasn't entirely sure I wanted to go, and you got to see the actual practice of law on a day-to-day basis. And it actually taught me that it was something I like to do. So you make those relationships, you learn the job, and you don't want to be sort of craven about it, but you can turn those relationships into a job opportunity someday, or maybe they don't have an opening, but they know someone who does. So I would say it's the values in the relationships.
Pamela?
So I mentioned the internship I had, and then in summers with college, I was working more than interning. I was just trying to earn money for the family. But what I will say, I didn't mention I have 3 children, 2 girls and a young man, and 2 have finished college. And to build upon what you said, internships are an opportunity to stick your foot in the water and see if the temperature's right? Some people, I have one of my mentees who just knew she wanted to be on Wall Street. So she took an internship on Wall Street last year, and she went, I really thought I wanted this. I'm not sure I do. So they are great learning opportunities, even if all you find is that this is not something I like to do. So take them seriously, but don't take them too seriously. Where you think that your whole life is planned. That's where you get to stick your foot in the pool and see if the temperature's right.
I actually thought I wanted to be a trust and estates lawyer because in law school we had a project, it was the 90s. And they have the AIDS Legal Assistance Project, so I was working with people with wills and standby guardianship for their kids and all of that, and I loved that work. And then I got into trust and estates in a firm, and it was all about tax, and I was like, ugh. So.
Yeah.
Steve?
I had an internship, one right out of college, and it was at the Organization of American States, which is an international, multinational organization here in Washington. And I'm thinking, as you guys were talking about it, and I agree with everything my colleague said, for me, it was a little bit about, it was a little bit about the experience of it. And so first of all, don't expect to be advising the executive director of the Organization of American States when you're the 21-year-old intern. Be realistic about the expectation, but the thing is, no matter what you're doing at that organization, you're learning about it, and you're learning about it from people on the inside, even if what they're asking you to do is file papers or while you're doing something that's pretty mundane, and you're like, I didn't go to 4 years of university to do this, but what you don't realize is what you're learning, right? And there's a couple of things I think that you're learning. One is you're learning, I can tell you a lot about international drug interdiction at the Organization of American States because I sat with the people that were doing the work. Now, what was I doing? Yeah, I was answering the phone, and I was playing around on this new thing called the internet, back in 1996. And then it also gave me, the experience also gave me something to talk about with that next employer, that was interesting to them. Think about your resume that you're now building, right? And that becomes a little bit of the things that you put on that resume are things that you want the employer to ask you about. Tell me about your experience at the Organization of American States. Again, was I there filing papers and surfing the web, or like, doing, more menial tasks as like the newest kid on the block? Yeah, but it gave me something to then talk to the next employer about, where maybe I really wanted to get a job. So I would just tell you, like, think about how the experiences you have tell your story, and then, be very deliberate. An internship is an investment in yourself, right? Because usually I think internship is just job without pay, right? I mean, versus job with pay. So that's hard, right? Not everybody can do that. Or maybe you got to do an internship and have a job that pays the bills. But think about that internship as like something that, if you're not getting all of the, the hands-on learning that you want, at least it's helping you tell your story about kind of what you want to do in your career.
Also, as an employment lawyer, if you're doing menial tasks, you should be getting paid. So get a paid internship.
My first internship was not, actually my 2 internships were not paid. We pay our interns. Let's talk about what happened at an internship. So my first job I was given as an intern, I was given this memo. And it was like this. It was 3 pages, and it was stapled. And I was told, make 20 copies and put them in each of the cubbies. Okay. Back then, by the way, yes, we're old up here, okay? Just we're clear with that. It was hand-typed. Parents? You guys know that sound, right? Well, I made a mistake. I took this thing, put it in the top of the copier, and hit 20, and boom. I forgot to take the staple out. It shredded. You're going to make mistakes, okay? You're going to make mistakes in your first job, in your career. You're going to make mistakes in an internship. It's how you respond to them. So, panelists, tell me about a mistake that you made and something you learned from it.
Gosh.
Steve, we'll start with you.
Thank you.
Oh boy, yeah, this would have been a good one to a little forethought. Well, let me say this. Like, as I mentioned, my first job was working for Senator Fritz Hollings, and he had been in the Senate longer than I'd been alive when I started working for him. And so, part of his method was with the new kids who came in, to kind of put them through some questions, because he had, infinite knowledge on a bunch of topics, and he had been present at a lot of really important moments in history. And what he would do would be to ask you questions to the point where he knew you didn't know the answer to the question that he was asking you, and he wanted to see what your reaction was. Right? Was your reaction to make something up? Was your reaction to guess? Or was your reaction to say, Senator, I don't know the answer to that question. Let me go find out, and I'll come right back. Because he knew that as the relationship grew, that he was going to be in a situation, in a hearing, and it happened, right? Where, he's like, turns to me and is like, who is the allied commander of NATO, right? And in those days, like, you didn't have an iPhone to just pull the answer really quick. So he needed to know, like, if you give him an answer, that it's solid, like it's verified, right? But if you didn't know the answer, that you would like step out, or there were like ways to to kind of very quickly get the information. But he needed it in the moment, right? And so I think. For me, the lesson in that, I didn't know the answer. I had to get it. But the lesson was, I think in those instances, know the situation, because if the situation is, I'm going to give you my best guess, and if that's the relationship you have with, another colleague, great. But like in this instance, it's like, and I think the best practice here is to say, I don't know the answer. Let me find out, and I'll come back to you with an answer that I'm certain about. But I do think there are probably lots of these parables in in professional situations. But you kind of like know that like there are going to be instances where you're going to be kind of tested in that way, and it's going to be like, I need to know how you're going to react so that I know how to work with you when we get into like really kind of, live fire situations.
Interesting. I'm building on that because just as way of background, my undergraduate degree is in sociology and economics. My graduate degree is in public policy. I was all about urban development, urban finance, financing development projects. My first job was at a car company in corporate finance. I took the advice of a friend who said, and a mentor who said, go there, get a couple years of business experience, it will serve you well. And it did. It opened doors in the field that I wanted to be in ways I wouldn't have imagined. That's how I got to where I am now. That being said, at this company, I had an MPA. Everyone else had an MBA. So my training was not in corporate finance, it was in public finance. And I say that to say I've had to learn very early on to be able to admit that you have a question and to knock on a door and say, can you clarify, to your point? Because if you think about it, in a car company, if you're off by $10 on one number, and that's 100,000 cars a year, that's a lot of money every year that just flows, that's a rock that flows through their financial system. So I had to learn because, it can be intimidating. That was the first time that I didn't follow a path or something I loved. It was something I liked, but not something I loved. And I was surrounded by people who were infinitely probably more experienced in that field of finance. So I had to learn very quickly after, just a couple of things where I was like, ooh, that's not right. And luckily I had a very understanding supervisor who said, think about it this way. But being able to say, I just want to ask you this quick question about how you're thinking about this so that I can get it right very early on. I learned a lot from that situation.
So I make mistakes all the time. It was definitely a transition from like being the lawyer in the corner, down at the end of the hall that no one wants to talk to being the head of HR and having to be in meetings and, So I do make mistakes. I'm still learning. And what I've learned is it's much better to go to our COO or our owners and say, you know what? I messed up on this. This is how I'm going to fix it. They do not want you to hide a mistake. That is the worst thing that you could do. Owning up to it, having a solution, or at least a suggestion, is probably the best approach, at least within my company. And I'm not sure all companies are the same, but I would say it's a pretty solid piece of advice. And then just on a kind of more personal note, my first legal summer associate position, I hadn't worked in a law firm before, and I came to work one day dressed inappropriately. And I didn't realize it until someone sort of pulled me aside, and I was mortified. But now that's something that I'm very careful about. I make sure that I'm appropriate for, the circumstance, and I would rather err on the side of being more conservative because you can really get kind of a black mark for that in some place like a law firm. So some of it's practical and some of it's work related.
Steve, you got a follow-up?
Well, thank you for sharing that story. That's, takes a little, put yourself out there a little bit to tell that. I was just going to say, like, one other thing that I wish somebody had told me, and now we're like, I've maybe moved us into that portion of the of the discussion. But if you are like, I spent a lot of time after my Hill career in an IT sales environment, and if you miss and I'd have to watch these guys, and they carried these huge quotas, and a lot of times they wouldn't meet their quota because it was very aggressive in how this was done. And if you know that like you've put in kind of your best effort and you're not gonna hit a goal or a milestone, it's really important to have, and I'm kind of triggering on what you said, to have a plan pre-made. When you go in to talk to a manager about missing something or making a mistake, be ready with a remediation plan. Like, don't sit there and just say, I didn't get there. You may want to, I may want to hear like an explanation for why you didn't do it, but like what I immediately want, and I don't want to have to ask for it, and observe this in others, that I have to ask you for what's the get well planned. Come ready with that. I mean, if you know you're going to miss, and I say watch the best ones. It's like pivot that conversation for how you're going to fix what is not right.
Steve, you've hit a pretty nail on the head, but Pamela, please go for it next.
I was going to say, and as many of you are about to leave for college, Same applies there from having 3 kids in college. Don't wait until the end of the semester or when you're getting to the final to talk to your professor if you're having problems or you're struggling or you're not understanding something. Go see them early. Don't wait until the end until you're kind of backed into a corner. Definitely applies for college, right? Stop in there along the way and ask for help. There's nothing wrong with that.
My daughter made that mistake. She's always been someone who wants to figure everything out on her own. She'll find a YouTube video that shows her how to do it before she'll ask me. I didn't know she could sing until she was in a talent show in end of elementary school, and she just got up there and did it, and I had no idea. But she doesn't want to have to ask for help, you know? And the toughest lesson she had was, you know, you've got to communicate with your professors. You can't just sit in the back of the room and, you know, just be a number in that class. Communicate with them. It turned out she needed accommodations because she had some ADHD and autism. So, you know, giving them that information, forging that relationship, and also some professors aren't going to care. There are professors who are like, look, this is the deadline, it's the deadline, you know, but you have to at least try and you have to communicate, and when you need help, ask for it. That's why they're teachers. They want to teach you. If you never ask and then you show up and fail the exam, they're less likely to help you.
How many times have you all heard that from your parents? Right? Ask, right? You're going to make mistakes, guys. We've all made mistakes in our careers, in our lives, and I'll make a few of them today, I'm certain of that, and I'll probably get yelled at for this great panel we're having up here. Erica keeps looking at me like, what are you guys doing up there? We're having fun. I told you that part. So raise your hand, right? If you have a problem, raise your hand. There are people who are willing to help you, both personally and professionally. Don't hold it to yourself. But let's get now, because you guys are starting to hit the next question we're going to hit on, which is best career advice, okay? Your best career advice. I'll tell you mine. I was walking down the hallway at Pfizer. The CFO, the person who's in charge of all the money, comes up behind me. He's a big, huge football player. And he puts his on the back of my shoulder. He goes, Kerins. Yes, Frank? Big guy. He goes, I've been thinking about you. You carry a lot of sticks. You might want to carry some more carrots. And he walks away. I'm going, what the heck was that all about? It took me a day or two to realize that I was coming across maybe a little too strong, right? Great. It was the best advice I've ever gotten. And that was his perception, by the way. That was what he was seeing. So think about that. When someone gives you, is going to give you advice, listen. That's your job, right? Your job is to listen. So best career advice.
Okay. So what you want to do now is not what you're going to want to do in 20 years. And it's not the plan that you have for yourself now. I'm sure there are exceptions to that. Someone who wants to be a, I don't know, biochemical engineer or whatever. And that's what you love and that's what you want to do. But, you know, I'm not doing what I thought I would be doing when I was, 22 or 25 even. And then on a more practical level, learn how to communicate, how to write particularly, and because it makes a huge difference. I have seen C-suite executives that, their writing is terrible, and it just doesn't present you well.
So when I was in public policy, I was writing policy for a company, and I had this boss who was a force. She was a force. Everybody was terrified of her. Women, men, everybody. I wasn't terrified. I loved learning from her. So we went to a meeting, and it was her and 3 other people, her level, all peers. They were all men. I was the junior person there. So they all just kind of sat back, and so I advanced the slides for the meeting. And the meeting ends, and Susan pulls me aside, and she said, if you ever, because they weren't my slides. They were one of the guys' slides. And she said, if you ever do that again, and then she went into some things about what she would do to me if I ever did it again. She said, never put yourself in that position. And I said, but I was the lowest ranking person. I was still a manager, but I was the lowest ranking person there. And she said, conduct yourself in the job you want to have, not the job you are in.
That is wonderful.
Present yourself as in the job that you want to have in terms of how you show up, and not what you were in. She just read me the riot act. On another note, one of my personal mentors was Dr. Dorothy Height, who, I don't know if you've gotten to that part in the history books, but she was one of the main advisors around Dr. King during the Civil Rights Movement. Her building is right down the street on Pennsylvania. And she used to talk about how if they took a picture with Dr. King and Abernathy and all of the big folks in that movement. She said, Pamela, if I stood on the edge of the picture, when the picture went to print, they'd crop me out. Not Dr. King, but the people publishing the paper. So she said, I learned to wait until the last minute, and I jumped in the middle of the picture, and they couldn't crop me out. And she said, don't ever put yourself in a position where people can crop you out, literally and figuratively. That is always in my head. Always put yourself in a place where no one can crop you out of the picture because you're relevant and you're there. So those are my two pieces.
So I was at trial one time, and we went very late, and we're going to have to change the jury instructions. And I was the only woman in the room, and the judge told me I should do the typing, like go back to his office and change the jury instructions and do the typing. And I was a young associate, so of course I did it. And now I wish I had, like, why me? You know.
Right. Steve?
I don't know if I can follow that. That's really, no, I mean, it's tremendous advice. I would say two things. We've gotten to 40 minutes into this panel, and I haven't mentioned Jeff Bezos yet, which is like a record for me. I would say one thing I would encourage you guys all to go do is look at the leadership principles at Amazon and these come straight from Jeff Bezos, but like read the leadership principles that are basically like the guidelines for employment at Amazon, because I think they're really great kind of life, these are like, 10 commandments or something, corporate commandments. So I would encourage people to take a look at that. From a piece of advice, and I would plus one on my colleagues, but I want to say one thing relevant to you guys here today is like, your career is going to be a network. And we talk a lot about it at Amazon. Like, is it a ladder or is it a lattice? Like, what's the shape of this corporate structure? But the thing about it is, the one thing that I've learned, and it really is maybe a little bit where my career is a little bit different in policy and in politics, is that like you need to network, because you need to be able to draw on, like, hey, I met this other student who, like, maybe you meet somebody, during this week that you're gonna know again at college, in your university, or maybe you meet somebody in the neighboring town. The people, the connections that you make, and now that with all of the media tools, the social media tools that we have, the networks that you guys are going to be able to build are extensive. And what's going to happen is, I'm going to be asked, hey, Steve, do you know somebody at KKR? I'm going to be like, yes, I do, because I've had this experience today. So. Think about, like, be very purposeful about, and sometimes it's a little bit, you have to really, kind of talk yourself into being, extroverted and introducing yourself. You guys are all here for a reason, because you kind of excel in civics, and you've taken a very active interest, and that's kind of a tie that binds you all together. And then, like, the part of it when I was talking about policy and politics is that, like, I might sit across the table from somebody, or they may work for me, and then 5 years from now, they're at the White House and I'm going and trying to get on their calendar, right? Well, how did I show up in that relationship when I was in the position of, like, they worked for me, right? And if the boss was a jerk and the tables turn, and the tables will turn in life, how did you treat that person? How did you treat the person when they worked for you and you maybe had a little bit of leverage in that relationship? Were you fair? Were you friendly? And so, like, there's not a day, like, I remind myself of that every day. I'm looking out at this network and thinking, in some way we're all going to be networked together, and that's great. But I'm also thinking, about, on a daily basis, like, how you treat people, professionally, how you treat people is really important. And, and it's not simply that you're there as, you're on the bottom of the totem pole thinking, I'm going to get all these people when I become the boss. But it's, think about, like, how they become part of your network and how you may need to draw on them. There's something about their background, something about their career that's going to, be very important to you as you go through yours.
Thank you, panelists. Well, folks, now we've come to the fun part. It's your turn. You've had almost 42 minutes to think of your questions for these panelists. So we like to, who's going to be the first one?
Let's start with gold medalists, right? So
Absolutely.
if any gold medalists have questions, if they
Come on
can
down.
over here.
We got microphones ready for
Yeah.
you.
Yes.
As you're coming down, the most important thing is, as the team just said here, I have a saying that I use in school. When I teach the schools, I teach at NYU and a few other places. The people who love you will tell you the truth. It's your turn to listen. We'll start on this side.
Hello. Thank you all so much for coming to speak with us. My name is Christian Flanoy. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, rising sophomore at Cornell University, studying biomedical engineering on the pre-med track. And one thing I wanted to ask you, and this is just not just for my parents, but I guess for everyone here, you talked about career advice, but what's one thing that your parents have told you that has kind of stuck with you? For me, one thing that my dad always says is preparation plus opportunity equals success, and that's something that he's helped me live by. So just curious what it's been like for y'all's lives and something that your parents have told you.
Honestly, really don't have an answer for that. It was more sort of a negative example, actually. So when I graduated Duke Law School in 1997, my dad is an academic. He's a neuropsychopharmacologist, I don't know, drugs in the brain. And he was like, so you're going to go on to get your PhD? And I was like, no, I got married in law school. I was like, I'm going to get a job and have a life. And he told me that it was basically like being a plumber if I wasn't bettering the world. And so you've got to be able to choose whose advice you take and whose you don't. You know, at some point, what your parents say is not going to align with what you want, and you've got to be able to pick out those important pieces that really resonate with you and then throw the rest away.
Little bit of background. My mom was widowed and older when she adopted me. I was adopted at birth. Neighbors always had cool clothes and lip gloss and stuff that I wanted. We had what we needed. We didn't have extra. But I went to private school through scholarships and things like that my whole life. And it was because she said, an education's the only thing I can give you that no one can take. Everything else can be stolen. This is the only thing I can give you, other than love, that no one can take from you. So that education that you're getting at Cornell and that all of you are getting, when you have that, nobody can take that from you. So that's what I focus on.
I'm literally speechless. That's amazing. You know, I look out here and I see a lot of parents in the room, and you know, like your presence to me says, I mean, it's advice. I mean, it's like, you know, there's sacrifice in raising children, and again, you know, and for those of you who maybe don't have a parent here, you know that. You know, that is like an essential part. I kept talking about the network, an essential part of the network. So, you know, there are parental figures, if not actual parents. But again, you know, to see you say that, you know, with your parents here, with you know, with adults that are with you is like heartwarming. My dad really said, you know, both. You know, put on the spot here, he really said that, you know, worthwhile things are hard, right? And so, you know, you have to be willing to put in the work. And that is true. I mean, again, it's like, and it's true now, like the things that frustrate you are the things, you know, that are sometimes hard to, you know, hard to achieve or hard to work through. And so, you know, be ready to put in the hard work, because I'll tell you, it's like the feeling after, you know, a long run or taking, you know, even, you know, finishing a standardized test, you come away feeling like, you know, I've accomplished something. So put in the work. That's what my dad would tell me.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning. And Ray, I met you yesterday. It's a pleasure to see you again. So I'm Anthony from California, and I'm going to senior year. And just a question for all of you. So what happens when you don't like your boss or you don't like the administration or whatever? Are you supposed to suck up to them, deal with it? Because I've had too many unwanted encounters with my school administration.
Do tell.
Yeah, I remember our conversation yesterday. All right, let's keep these answers tight now because I see folks starting to line up, though. So, Pamela, you want to go first on this one?
Brand matters. We talked earlier about your resume. For you, brand is important and your village is important. Never put yourself in a position where one person owns your narrative. So when you're working for a boss, and I've worked for a couple that needed some coaching, and so, but there were other people who knew me and knew my work. So if someone said, oh, well, there were other people who stood up and said, no, we know her too. Make sure your village is broad enough and enough people know your brand that you have other resources.
Yeah, and I've had several difficult bosses, and I, when they are senior to me, I'm respectful, but I try to keep my sort of where the line is of what I will do and what I won't do. In law firms, that is prevalent. There are a lot of senior partners who think the world revolves around them, and I've had managing partners throw things at me. And, you just have to know when to kind of remove yourself from that situation. And the best revenge is to then be in-house counsel and be able to tell them what to do. So.
Steve, and by the way, and after this one, what we're going to do is we're going to get only one panelist get a chance to answer so we can, folks are lining up, so we get everybody a chance to ask questions. Steve?
Well, at least if it's school administrator, you'll graduate, right? And you'll move on from that. I think you just have to. Those are difficult situations where you have to really, especially in a job, you really have to kind of weigh out. If it becomes such a, like you shouldn't ever be in a job situation where you absolutely hate the job day in, day out. Like if you find yourself in that situation and that's what, then you need to think about like maybe this isn't the right job. And like, I'll just say that, we talked like that's okay in a career, right? I mean, if it gets to a point where, you just can't work there anymore, like, or you're being asked to do something that really, violates, kind of principles that you have, then I would just say maybe there are instances where you just have to walk away from that and be okay with it.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you for the question.
So first of all, thank you so much for the talk. And my name is Matt Bison. I'm going to be I'm a rising college freshman at UT Austin, and I'm going to be studying economics. And my question was, earlier we talked about taking opportunities, and that's what gets you what you have in life. And my question is, what's been the key thing that's helped you differentiate good opportunities and better opportunities?
Who wants to go?
I mean, I'll try. I think that it's kind of my answer to that would be something like this kind of career ladder, career lattice. I mean, I think if a career usually is going to be a stepping stone, and it's kind of like we were describing with the internship or an entry level position is part of your you don't start as the chief legal officer for Five Guys. You take a lot of jobs between here and there, but I think you want to be purposeful about, like, at least as I've looked at my own life, it's about this job is going to prepare me for maybe it's deliberately for something else, or it's a range of things that I know that like this experience will help position me for it. And so it's a little bit of like know where you want to go in your career as early as you can. I understand that can be like daunting at times. So then I think you want to make sure that that you are, especially in more entry level positions, you're learning something that's useful. You enjoy what you're doing, and you think that it can be a stepping stone to something else. And then again, like if you do the other things we've talked about with like building networks, that's where you'll start to have opportunities that come your way. And just like, the thing is that, the chief legal officer at Five, I'm just going to keep going with you, like that position over time is going to turn over, right? So like these, as you guys grow and the older you get, the more like now you're more seasoned and senior for like the next position in the company. It kind of happens naturally. It's the natural order of things. But you want to have like the opportunities. You want to be in a position where you're in a position in a job to look for that next opportunity.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Hi everyone. everyone. Thank you guys for coming and speaking, giving such great advice. My name is Gia Mahesh, and I'm a rising senior in high school, and I'm hoping to pursue environmental law at UC Davis. Ms. Pamela, you had mentioned that when you were a lower-ranking manager, you had ran a slide for somebody, and your mentor had told you that it wasn't your job and you shouldn't act as an assistant for someone else. And so my question would be, how would you guys say no when you're so young and new to a position?
So really quickly, part of the reason she yelled at me is because everyone's kind of sitting around and no one offered to do it. So I stepped in and they said, you do that. I think that it's a little bit dicey, right? You're sitting in a meeting and you're a more junior person. I probably should have just sat there and let him run his own slides, right? So I think part of it is don't put yourself in that position, right? And if you're asked, I think the way you respond, depending on the thing, and we can talk about this after, I'm happy to talk about you later, but okay, I'll help you with that, right? So it's kind of clear that really this isn't my job, but I will be a team player and help you with that. So it's all about how you position what you've been asked to do. Right, so that it's not just assumed that that's your role, but that you're being a team player. I'm okay with helping you with that, if that would be good for the meeting. But then they realize you're saying, well, that's not really my job, but I'm going to help you anyway. So it's a positive way of doing it.
Thank you.
Sorry, this is tall for me. Okay, hi. Thank you so much for coming to speak with us today. My name's Avery Mizrahi. I'm a rising freshman at Harvard studying neuroscience. This is kind of a basic question, but I find that it really gives me insight into who you are and what makes you get up in the morning. Anyone can answer. What are you excited about?
You know, I was never ambitious, honestly. You know, I didn't care if I made partner when I was in law firms. I just wanted to do good work. And it has changed now. Because for many years, I was a single parent. I was really just focused on getting my child grown and in college. And now I have time to pursue the things that, you know, and I find that I do want to do a good job and I want to be known for it and I want to travel for business and travel personally. And I'm not afraid of that ambition anymore. But you know, hey, my daughter's coming next week and I'm super excited. I have a new grand cat that I have spent way too much money on. You know, there's personal and there's professional and the job still excites me every day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing all of your expertise and experience. My name is Madeline Freeland, and I'm a rising freshman at Vanderbilt University. And I was wondering, what is the most gratifying or rewarding aspect of your job?
Ooh, can I take that one?
Absolutely.
Okay, so real quickly, there was a Pew study that says if you're born in this country, regardless if it's rural, urban, whatever, a few years ago, if you're born in the bottom 20% economically, you have a 4% chance of making it to the top 20% economically. That's ridiculous. My life is how do I kick down doors to try and change that 4%? Because that's an unacceptable number to me, because where you were born as a child should not determine where you end in life. I was told by teachers, well, that's a whole nother story, I can tell that later. But anyway, so I'm just really excited about being able to kind of knock down those doors. We have a program at Cornell that I started with them last year, KKR and Cornell, that's around first-generation students and providing all kinds of tools and mentorship to ensure their success at Cornell. Those types of programs get me really excited because I'm changing that for one little digit at a time.
Excellent, thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
Once again, thank you all for being here. You guys are all extraordinary in your respective ways. I have a question for Steve. You haven't spoken in a while. I think that I can speak for all of us when I say none of us started this way. We all worked our way here. So I wanted to ask you, was there any particular chapter or turning point in your upbringing that changed your character development for the better? And if so, what did you get out of that?
30 seconds.
He's got his timer out now.
Take 30 seconds to think about it.
I'm starting it right now.
Yeah.
I'm starting the watch.
You know, I think it builds on what I said about my dad's advice to me that hard things, you have to really train to do hard things. played a lot of sports growing up, and I feel like I learned a lot of lessons around, how, it's like the purest form of of comparative measure. So I feel like I learned a lot of lessons there. The experience that I mentioned when I came to Washington, and I really took this job on Capitol Hill thinking it was a stepping stone to something else. And then I realized that, I was working for somebody who was a World War II hero, who integrated the schools peacefully in South Carolina, who was a party to the Brown versus Board of Education, endorsed John F. Kennedy as a Southern governor in South Carolina. Like, I realized that it just kind of opened my eyes to how little I knew, how much I thought I knew, and then how little I actually knew. And that has been one of the greatest lessons to learn, that I didn't know everything. And I think, that just, now we're like lifelong students.
Very good. Thank you.
We have time for one more, but some of us will be around afterwards if you want to have further conversations.
Hi, I'm Sophia Chow from California, and I'm a rising senior in high school. My question is, what's the most important thing you have got out of high school that has stuck with you now? It could be something small, like a slip up in biology, or something big, just anything.
Best thing I took out of high school was I had a high school that really focused on writing. So focusing on that and being a good writer is a skill that has just been really important to me in life.
Excellent. Folks, we're sorry if we didn't get to all your other questions. We love the fact there are so many of them. Again, some of us will be around, but look, let's wrap this up. Number one, ask questions, right? Number two, raise your hand. Get involved like you've done here. You're in this room because you got involved. You spent a lot of time. Number three, the people who love you will tell you the truth. Your job is to listen. Mom and dad loves you. They're the only people in the world that want you to be better than they are, right? Career advice is one of these things where you heard a lot of different angles here, okay? There are people around here who care about you and want to see you all succeed. You're gold medalists. Give yourself a round of applause. And finally, let's thank our panelists for the time, the dedication they give to you all. Good job, guys. All right, Erica.
Thank you, everybody. Just want to thank Ray. Thank you so much for leading this panel. Ms. Roberts, Ms. Alexander, and Mr. Hartel. Thank you to the members of our board. Okay, we're taking a short break, but we're coming back to talk about financial empowerment and entrepreneurship. So for some of you that had questions, you'll have the chance to ask questions in the next panel. So short break, and then we'll meet back here. Next panel starts at 11:30, so please come back around 11:20 at the latest. Thank you.
I didn't realize I was. This was great. That was fun.